5-Year Mission the Podcast, Episode 25.
This episode of 5-Year Mission the Podcast is brought to you by Fansets, your home for all things pop culture pin related. Head over to fansets.com and see all that they have to offer. And also stay tuned at the end of the episode for a very special offer from us here at 5-Year Mission.
By now you figured out that this is the 5-Year Mission Podcast.
Welcome to 5-Year Mission, the podcast, the only podcast hosted by a band called 5-Year Mission.
You used that one already.
I know, but I kind of like that as okay, you come up with one, smart guy.
You're doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to 5-Year Mission, the podcast, the only podcast hosted by me, Andy Fark. And joining me is the founder of 5-Year Mission and all-around general douchebag, Mr. Mike Rittenhouse.
That's not fair.
That's totally fair. And joining us tonight, we have two very special guests to talk about our topic. We have Mr. Jim Moorhouse, fired the phase cannons himself from the Trek Ranks podcast.
I'm here. And Mike's not a douchebag.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome, buddy.
You can tell him that all he wants, but there's never going to be truth to it. And then our daddy, our podcast daddy, our pod daddy.
Everybody's pod daddy.
From the Trek Geeks podcast of the Trek Geeks Network, Mr. Bill Smith.
Hey guys, did you almost get the name of my podcast wrong and your network?
No, because I was already talking about Trek Ranks, and then I decided that I needed to say the actual name correctly.
Yeah, that's good. No, it's great to be here. Finally to get an invite after 22 episodes, is that right?
24.
24. I knew it was in the 20s. So almost like a full year after you started or more. Yeah. It's good to finally be on the podcast that's on my network.
This is like my fourth time.
Yeah, I know.
But now, Bill, you also have to notice that we didn't invite Dan to this, though. So
well, that's because you didn't want this to suck.
Exactly. We needed content. We didn't need any breathy laughter and jokes that fall flat. So
let's be honest. You didn't want to compete with the Farkisms. I can respect that.
That's true. That's true. Maybe next time we will have Dan on, and I will have a Danism prepared. I mean, I've done them a couple times in the past, but just not on this podcast. So
yes.
I think around because do you remember what episode that he started doing the Farkisms?
I think it was pretty early on. I want to say it was in the teens somewhere.
Really, that early?
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to find out pretty quickly because one of the episodes we're releasing during the holiday season is a supercut of all the Farkisms. So we're talking like over 200 episodes. I might have to break it up into two separate episodes of Trek Geeks because there's that many of them.
Wow.
He's done one for every episode. He says he has a database of them all, and I believe him. So
good Lord.
Fantastic.
200 Fark puns. I can't wait to edit this. Yeah.
You look super excited about that.
Yeah. Oh, there aren't words to qualify and quantify my excitement.
Unsubscribe.
Mike, you would actually have to subscribe to it in the first place.
It's oh so very true. So tonight we are going to be talking, speaking of podcasts, we are going to talk about other Star Trek podcasts, not just our own, because you may be listening to this, you may be thinking, where can I get more Star Trek goodness in my podcast diet? Tonight we're here to tell you about a few of them. And we each went ahead and picked like kind of a little favorite one, a couple of them at least I hope you guys are prepared for that. And we are going to get on it. So, Jim, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Jim Moorhouse, Trek Ranks podcast. What do you have as your first pick of one of your favorite Star Trek podcasts out there?
One of my favorite Star Trek podcasts out there. I don't know where to begin. I'm going to begin with these guys. This is a deep cut Star Trek podcast. 10 backward is my buddy Rick Everson,
nice.
UK. And I really like their show. They're just it's like two Ricks, a Will and a Gemma. and they just talk about Star Trek. We've had Rick on Trek Ranks a couple of times. My cat is on my computer, and you guys, that was a large cat. Yeah, I really like the way they just have a good time talking about Star Trek. Oh, I did 5 words in a hashtag. Rick's a really good dude. Hashtag, and I like his Trek takes. Rick Everson.
You sounded like me there for a second.
Yeah, I had too many words.
Okay, so it's Trek backwards.
There we go. No, it's 10 backward. That's it.
10 backwards. 10 backwards.
Instead of 10 forward. It's,
right.
It really, maybe not the most clever name, although I think it fits.
It works. I mean, and also now I'm really going to have to start listening to it, mainly because I just want to hear British accents talk about Star Trek.
There you go.
Yeah. Ooh, and hey, but okay, now what are you drinking out of your Raiders cup there?
That is a cherry Coke Zero.
Fancy.
So much like the Raiders, not a lot of substance there at all.
You mean the 3-time Super Bowl champion Raiders?
How many?
3 times.
That's how many less than?
Yeah, I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking. Yes, I acknowledge that. I'm not an idiot. I acknowledge that. But don't act like we haven't won 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah, but it was like when you were a teenager.
Well, that's actually true, and it breaks my heart a little bit. But,
I can't say anything. I'm a Colts fan. We've only won 1 since they've been in Indianapolis.
But in your adult lifetime,
in my adult lifetime, yes, I watched from a bar. So yeah, I'm stunned.
Listen, if we can turn this into this thing, if you want, Bill, because I will go off. Don't even start me.
I have a feeling we need to do a supplemental episode over on Trek Geeks where we talk nothing but football.
The NFL podcast brought to you by 5-Year Mission and the Trek Geeks Network.
Somebody else pick a podcast.
I'll pick one.
Hey, Bill, go ahead.
I'm not afraid. So I'm gonna keep it in the UK there for a second.
Ooh.
Admittedly, I haven't listened to a whole bunch of podcasts in the last few months because I haven't been commuting. I used to commute over an hour each way to work, and that was my sweet spot for listening to a lot of shows. It's where I, shook off the work day or, tried to avoid thinking about work on my way home or on my way to work. But lately I do have some things on in the background from time to time. And one of them is Trek Lad. Super positive, content. There's YouTube stuff, there's podcasts. And he does a fantastic job of celebrating what Star Trek and this fandom is about. I have an episode in the can that probably won't come out for months of his Networking on Nimbus 3 podcast. But I still listen to him even though he was, desperate for content and decided to have me on at some point. So you can find him at treklad.co.uk, or you can search for Trek Lad on just about every platform. But some really great content and some super, super positive energy over there.
Now, what's the format of it? Is just basically just like general Trek talk, or does he have like focused things?
Well, there's a little bit of each. I mean, the Networking on Nimbus 3 talks to Star Trek fans specifically about either their fandom or various other topics. He had a feature recently about, let's say, nice things about Threshold.
Ooh.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah, a short episode.
There are good things to say about Threshold. But it's all about celebrating what we love. And I'm sure that's something that James T. Moorhouse can get behind.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we need more of that because there's enough negativity out there.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Hey, Mike, do you got a first pick of a Trek podcast for us?
So you're going to be kind of pissed off, but
So, Mike, a podcast is this thing that people get on their device and they listen to it. It's kind of like on-demand audio, and people talk. It's really kind of cool. You should check one out sometime.
okay. So I came up with the idea for this where we talk about the podcast, and then I realized I don't actually listen to podcasts.
Exactly. When you shot the idea, I was like, wait.
I was listening to several back like a year or so ago, like before we even started the 5-year mission one. Like, because I used to go to the gym and I would listen to them at the gym. But I just haven't been listening in a while, so I don't really have any like new ones to recommend. And the ones that I was listening to, most of the people that host those podcasts are here right now. So sorry to be lame about it, but I guess my first pick would have to be Trek Ranks.
Yes.
All right.
We're not picking ourselves. Come on. But go ahead.
I've only listened to so many, so I have to pick from those. So yeah, I'll go with Track Ranks. Jim is here right now with us, so it's a really fun podcast. 5 words and a hashtag.
And what would your 5 words and a hashtag be to describe Trek Ranks? Put you on the spot because you did not prepare one, surprisingly enough.
Same show every week.
I'm gonna rip off Bill here for just a second. 5 words and a hashtag.
Well, that actually works.
It's 5 words.
Hashtag awesome.
Hashtag.
Hashtag fire the face cannons.
Woo-hoo.
Nice. I can't fault that. Actually, Trek Ranks is one of the ones I would pick too, because I have 2 top of queue podcasts that, whenever there's a new episode, they automatically get downloaded, and Trek Ranks is one of them. So I'll get to the other one a little later.
Ooh.
Thank you guys. That's awesome.
I definitely do have to agree. I mean, even though I'm biased because there is a lot of 5-year mission content within Trek Ranks, especially on TrekRanks.com, where he ranks every single 5-year mission song.
By the way, before the end of the year, there's going to be a new 5-year mission ranking page, so it's coming.
Yeah, I was wondering if you updated that yet.
I've been talking. I needed to get your 4 in there, but I also I'm going to expand it. So,
are one of my songs finally going to crack the top?
You're
20?
in the honorable mention of the 20. You're in there.
Honorable mention, not even in the top 20, but honorable.
No. It's top 10, and then there's 10 honorable mentions, and you are in there.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure. Making sure.
I'm going to rank all of them. Every song, but I'm not going to publish that because that would hurt some feelings. So
I was just going to ask that
because something's got to be number 78.
It's going to be very Rittenhouse heavy in the top 10. I'm sure
something's got to be Aquiel.
We'll see. Exactly.
We'll see if Errand of Mercy holds its top spot.
Yeah, it's
so good.
It's there's some consideration for some movement. But I'm not going to spoil anything yet. Anyway, that's TrekRanks.com, where you can find some 5-year mission content. And whereas you can hear 5-year mission every time on Trek Geeks, you can hear me just talk about how much I love them at the end of every episode of Trek Ranks.
Very true. And that's the entire reason we have you on this show tonight, Jim. to placate our egos.
So far, pick a podcast. Come on.
First one I'm going to pick tonight is a newer one that just wrapped up the first season, and I'm going with Star Trek: The Pod Directive, the official Star Trek podcast.
Stunned you picked that.
That was my next pick.
Well, there you go. We got a double.
We got a duplicate. Pew, 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 pew.
Try the phasers.
Which is a feature on the Trek Ranks podcast. But no, I as soon as they announced Star Trek: The Pod Directive, I was so stoked, mainly because I have been a huge fan of both Paul F. Tompkins and Tawny Newsome ever since since I first saw Paul F. Tompkins back on Mr. Show back in the day with Bob and David.
So good.
And then all of his stand-up, and then he's like the podcast king at this point. He has so many podcasts, but he would always have Tawny Newsome on episodes of Spontanea Nation, which is an entirely improvised podcast with like 8 guests, and it's just pure comedic anarchy. But as soon as they announced that, I was insanely excited. And they've had guests like Ben Stiller and Mike McMahon, and the last episode just wrapped up with composer Jeff Russo, who did all the Picard and Discovery scores. And they have great discussions over there too, and it's really, really well done. Oh, and as also I made a note of astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti, who is known for having the Captain Janeway Voyager cosplay on the International Space Station, and that was a great talk. So, have you guys listened to that one?
I have, and let's also give Fark some props right here for getting Paul F. Tompkins on Lower Decks, which is unbelievably awesome. Because you tweeted, I don't even know what it was. A while. It was like, hey, Mike McMahon, you should totally get Paul F. Tompkins on. And he responded like, you're right, we should. I'm going to do that for the second season. And then he ended up on the end of the first season. Amazing.
Yeah, which apparently he is supposedly going to be back for season 2.
Yeah, and by the way, his character was hilarious.
Totally.
The bird doctor
with all the food references.
Who sounds like John Billingsley.
He does.
Yeah,
He does. Yeah.
I remember you saying that when it premiered. I was like, that was Paul F. Tompkins.
I know, but the voice he used sounded not unlike Billingsley not being Phlox.
That's true.
It was fantastic. I like Star Trek The Pod Directive. It's nice to have an official Star Trek podcast that doesn't suck.
Ooh, let's not engage in that discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had the Pod Directive too, because it's nice to have something official where they have guests that are interesting and related to Trek in different ways, like Jefferson Russo or Tig Notaro's show was amazing.
Yep, definitely.
And Stacey Abrams was awesome.
That was awesome.
Oh, that was a great interview.
So cool. Great pick.
They just need to do more episodes.
Yeah, I know. I was a little disappointed that the first season wrapped up so quickly.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll figure that out.
I mean, it's not like people are actually going places. Let's get in a room and record this crap.
Precisely. Precisely.
That's a good pick, Fark.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought that was a pretty good one. I'm proud of myself.
It's a great pick. I had it too.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, do you have a third one?
It's me again. Yeah. So it's the 5 words in a hashtag. The other Bill and Dan hashtag Trek Live. I don't even have a hashtag. Forget it. Sorry, I thought I had one. I don't. It's Trek Live. Hashtag Trek Live is my hashtag. And that's the other Bill and Dan. They do a live show once a week. It's more of a little bit of like YouTube content. And they have commentary while they're going. But I love these two guys. Bill Mann's they've both been on Trek Ranks, and they have really good topics. Really, it's like you said, probably about Trek Lad, very positive, and they pick some real deep dives, and they're awesome. Trek Live, Bill and Dan, but not our Bill and Dan.
The other Bill
and Dan.
The more talented Bill and Dan, let's be honest about this, because Davidson and I are a couple of schmucks.
They're better looking. There's no doubt about it.
But
they are.
That's very true.
And I mean, we should probably say that, I mean, there are literally hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of Star Trek podcasts.
Yep.
And we're not trying to slight anybody. So if we don't happen to call out someone's show, believe us, it's not personal in any way, because there are so many damn podcasts.
Yeah.
I mean, on the Trek Geeks Network alone, we have 8 or 9 now in some form of production. Which means that there's even more everywhere else. So, no, but that absolutely Bill and Dan absolutely deserve a listen, because they do some great content.
Yeah, I love those guys.
Yeah, that's actually one of the ones that I've not checked out. So yeah, and this is also to fill my personal podcast queue now,
right?
Which is why we're doing this episode. Give me more things to listen to. All right, Bill, what do you got for another pick?
Well, I'm kind of going out of my own order, and that's fine. I also want to say, like, I'm not picking any Trek Geeks podcasts from the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, but I'm going to be biased and say I love all our shows. And if I didn't, they wouldn't be there.
Exactly.
We strive to put out content that other podcasts and other podcast networks are just not going to do, because we want to celebrate those aspects of fandom. And 5 Year Mission is a great example. Rewind is a great example.
Love Rewind.
Yeah. And if I were ever going to put one of our shows on, there's no way I could pick between any of them. So that said, my other top of queue podcast is Trek Profiles. John Krikorian does the Meet the Press of Star Trek podcasts.
Yeah.
And he is a great inquisitor and interviewer and does a great job exploring the fandom of Star Trek fans. It's intelligent, it's witty, it's fun. And like I said, it's one of two I pretty much never miss. So trekprofiles.com and wherever you get your podcasts pervade.
Pew, 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 pew.
Pew, 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 pew.
I had Trek Profiles as well. I mean, it's hard not to. John's kind of done such a good job with that. So
Yeah. And full disclosure, Jim and I are both past guests of Trek Profiles.
That's very true.
And that's not why we picked him. So I would have picked Trek Profiles had I never been on it because it's just that good.
yeah. Also, full disclosure, I'm not picking any Trek Geeks podcasts or 5YM, and these guys weren't supposed to pick Trek Ranks either, but since they did, that's awesome. So
I could.
No, you're
true.
not. Don't do it.
No, because I make the rules. So
That's
No, but
very true.
Bill, that's a good summary of John. He does. I just like what I like to hear on podcasts is just people talking about the show.
yep.
That's all I really want to. That's all I want to hear about. That's all I care about is the show. So, and I love when he gets into, okay, here's 10 episodes identified by M5. We're going to ask you why. I love that. I really like that part of it. And to me, I just like hearing people talk about why they like certain episodes.
It speaks so much to what people love about Star Trek. And it tells us about who they are as people in their lives. I mean, I've heard some stories that are absolutely hilarious and other ones that are just absolutely, tear inducing. And it's very personal. It's at times it's very raw, but it's always very honest. And that's the thing I really enjoy about the show.
I can get down with that.
Yeah.
Easily.
Is Mike going to pick another podcast, or is that it? Just Trek Ranks?
I don't even know if Mike knows the name of another podcast. We'll find out though.
Mike's going to pick my favorite murder.
I know the name of several podcasts. I can't claim that I've listened to them.
True.
But I will mention actually a podcast network that started with a podcast that I used to listen to, the Tricorder Transmissions, which I believe Trek Ranks is hosted on there. But I used to listen to the Tricorder Transmissions podcast all the time with Jeff Hewlett. It's really fun. They went through all the original series episodes and, just kind of watched them and talked about the episodes. And I don't know, it's kind of my first real Trek podcast I listened to back when I started listening to podcasts. So I have to, even though they don't really do it anymore. I mean, are they even on the network anymore, Jim?
No, I'm glad you said that. So Jeff's still running the network. He's kind of stepped away from podcasting a little bit. Hopefully we're going to get him back.
Hopefully.
But that was kind of where I started listening to podcasts too, was I discovered Tricorder and those old original series shows with Jeff and I can't remember. And I know Craig a little bit, but Jeff's a good friend and he still runs the network. So, and then I found you guys. I can't remember how I discovered you listening to you guys, but it was right after year one came out. And then I saw you were on Tricorder and you guys did some stuff with them, and that was awesome.
Yeah, we were frequent guests on the Tricorder Transmissions there for a hot minute.
Yeah, and that was great. And then did the what are little songs made of, and then now that's moved over here, and it's even better that it's still happening and going on. You guys are doing it yourself. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we actually do really need to thank Tricorder Transmissions for starting the series What Are Little Songs Made Of?
Definitely.
And then now
awesome.
We're continuing it on our own. We actually have I think 2 or 3 episodes in the can of What Are Little Songs Made Of right now that we have not released yet.
Ooh.
One.
Yeah, counting is hard.
2. Oh, nope. because there was one night where you guys were going to do 2, but
right. Yeah, we were going to do an extra one, but we ran out of time.
I've got one saved in my queue that I haven't listened to yet that I'm looking forward to.
Ooh.
So back to tricorder transmissions really quick.
Yes.
I don't see them on the list of shows on the network. Is there
right now
place
it's just in the archives, but short, there's still Shore Leave and
Weekly Trek.
and Weekly Trek. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen to this. I know the Tricorder Network almost as well. Damn.
Awesome.
All right, my next pick is going to be a little self-serving and a little bit of, I guess, a reach around a Bill here. Because the second that Bill and Dan contacted the band about using our music on the podcast, I had not really listened to any Star Trek podcasts up until that point.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, this was pretty early on in the band still.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I hadn't really gotten into the podcast very much. I mean, I'd, watch a few like YouTube videos with discussions and things like that.
we
then
appeared on a couple of podcasts.
Yeah, we appeared on a couple, but they were some low rent podcasts. But yeah, as soon as Bill and Dan contacted us about using our music on the podcast, I just kind of dove right in. And ever since, literally, from the very first episodes that Trek Geeks started using 5-Year Missions music, I have not missed a single episode.
I'm sorry.
And I know, right? I mean, I've had to listen to you for the past few years. And
5 plus, almost 6.
When did you start using them, Bill?
From the get-go. I contacted them before we ever produced episode 1.
Really?
I had listened to hours and hours and hours of royalty-free music on various websites, and it all sucked. And I don't know how I came to think of 5-Year Mission. I remember seeing you guys, I think, at Vegas the year before.
most likely.
As the house band. Mm-hmm. Or possibly the year before that. I don't remember exactly which year it was. And then somehow it came up in a Facebook group. I'm like, oh my God, those guys. And that's when I started mass listening to all the albums that were available at the time. I think it was 1 through 3. Mm-hmm. Because you hadn't done the Kickstarter for 4 yet.
No.
Okay.
And the more I listen, the more I'm like, yeah, no, this is ideal. This is what I'm looking for. It's unique. It helps us be unique and set ourselves apart. And plus, if we can just plug them every show and mention the hell out of them, maybe that works out for them too. So that's kind of how it came to be.
Yeah, we get great traffic just because of the Trek Geeks podcast, and always have
at least 2 or maybe 3 people.
Yeah. Awesome. In 6 years, it's amazing.
But no, I mean, in all seriousness, when I first started listening to you guys, and I could already sense like the camaraderie between you guys, and you guys knew, you know the subject matter. You have a passion for the subject matter, and the way you guys can bounce back and forth off of each other, it just makes me feel like I'm like at a party and I'm in the corner of the room just listening in on someone else's conversation, like 2 best friends that haven't seen each other in a while, and like all they want to do is just gush about their favorite thing in the world. And your guys' favorite thing in the world happens to be Star Trek, and it's super well done. So kudos,
well,
sir. Thanks for having us on your podcast network.
I mean, it works so good. It's why you guys are so popular, and no one will ever figure out how it works with Dan, but somehow it's still does.
Right.
It's funny because we tell this story a lot, and it seems like it would be made up, but it, in honest to God, is not. We went to the last Creation Convention in Boston in 2014, and Dan and I had not seen each other physically in 10 years.
Yeah,
we got together, and we'd never been to a Star Trek convention together either, ever. And so we're sitting there, and we fell right back into it like we never stopped. Like from the moment we saw each other, it was just like 10 years before the last time we saw each other. And I had just barely started listening to podcasts. I'd been listening to Nerdist, and I'd been listening to a couple of others because I was just getting into podcasts. And I said, hey, you think you'd ever want to do a podcast? And without missing me, he goes, no. What's a podcast?
Of course he did.
He didn't even know what a podcast was.
Right.
And then so I started telling him about it on the way home. He goes, no, that could be fun. And that's kind of how it took me after that almost 6 months to figure out what Trek Geeks was going to be, because I'd owned the domain name for years before that. And that's kind of how it started. Dan and I give each other a lot of shit on Trek Geeks. and deservedly so. But he's my brother, and I love him. I couldn't do that show with anybody else. It would not be the same. It wouldn't work.
I agree.
And that's the way it sounds, the way it does. The banter and the relationship you hear is how we relate to each other in real life. It's not an act. It's not a put on. If people read half the crap we type to each other, they would probably stop listening to us.
But you don't even need to say that. I think that's why the show works, because everybody knows that. It's not, you can't fake that. And like you said, you can't, if one of you gets hit by a bus,
it's over.
That's all you can.
Done.
The show
is. Dan and I have had that conversation. The network would go on, but Trek Geeks as a show would be over because there's no way either of us would do it without the other one.
Yeah.
And like I said, nor could we. The reason why it works is because we're a couple of jerks to each other. But it's all based in love. So your words are very kind. We're still trying to figure this out even 5 years, 6 years later. It's a moving target for both of us. And now we started with a second podcast, and now we have a whole network. So we're doing something that people want to hear. And I take great joy in that every day.
Yeah, deservedly so. You should be. Fill your own ego up. That's all you got to do. Build yourself up, Buttercup.
It doesn't suck to see a Discovering Trek shirt on set at Star Trek Discovery.
No shit.
I'm not going to lie.
That was awesome.
CBS posted that photo, and I became speechless on the meeting I was on for work. I saw it post. I'm like, I'll never cease to be amazed.
I totally agree. Totally agree. All right, let's do one more round of this. Jim, you got another one in the holster there?
Yes, I do. I have two more. I'm going to do them both.
Ooh, all right.
Well, I'm going to give a prop. I should have said it when it came up. Props to Weekly Trek at Tricorder. It's my. I was going to say that. Yeah, I do. Cutting through the Dominion propaganda hashtag. This is the place to get it in context, because Alex probably does an amazing job of just cutting through the actual facts of reporting the stories that are legit and how they kind of fit into the context. So Weekly Trek is awesome. 30-minute news show every week on Tricorder. So pumping up the home network a little bit there. But my favorite podcast, I got to tell you, out there, because it's kind of like Trek Rank, so I love it, is Snap Trek with Ross and Jen. And they pick two episodes, and some of them are obvious, it makes sense, but sometimes they pick two that you have no idea have all these correlating similar things, and then they just do a round of picking topics and comparing and contrasting, and it's an awesome podcast. That is the one. If you listen to Trek Geeks or Trek Ranks, go find Snap Trek. That's the one that fits.
So no, let me get this. They're taking two episodes, and then they just kind of compare and contrast the two, like what the two. The most
recent episode is The Perfect Mate and Elan of Troyes. Two episodes where they're transporting of a princess to an arranged marriage, which sounds as awful as it is, but they cut through it so brilliantly. I'm trying to think of some other
examples.
Yeah, they did. There was one that was an amazing. It was. They've done Wink of an Eye and Blink of an Eye. They did. Okay.
Nice.
The battle versus hope and fear. Okay, which you think? Oh. Okay, the battle is a TNG episode where it's where a ship was gifted to the crew, and a mystery ensued in both of those episodes. Which is you never would think that those two episodes had a ship gifted to the crew, but that's what happened in the battle in TNG and Hope and Fear in Voyager. And so then they pick these similar topics that apply to both episodes. They go through it and they just have fun talking about it. It's a great show.
Interesting.
Great show.
Yeah, it is.
I highly recommend it.
I'm definitely going to have to give that one a listen too. I'm getting all kinds of recommendations tonight. I love it.
Yep.
So that's actually secretly kind of the reason that I wanted to do this, because I wanted to know which shows I should be listening to and not have to sift through all of them and waste my time.
Yeah.
So we got 8 shows on the network, buddy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're all good. I've listened to Trek Geeks.
Oh, that one right there sucks.
That one's not good.
All right, Mike, weekly Trek, snap track. Add them to your queue. Boom, go.
I like it.
Mike, actually, I think you would definitely like Rewind on the Trek Geeks Network.
Mike would love that. Mike would love that.
That would be like right up your alley.
Two Canadian women who drink, talk about Star Trek, and swear. I think it's your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Rittenhouse's wheelhouse.
It's kind of like the anti-Trek geeks. Originally, their concept was to take episodes that we said skip it to and a see it or skip it and turn it into see it's. And now they're just skipping all over the place because there's plenty of Star Trek out there. So
so much content.
So much.
So if it's the anti-Trek geeks, it already sounds good.
Right. Right. Plus they drink. So
yeah.
So I have two more to go.
Two more to go. Do them.
Do you want to hear them?
Let's hear them.
I do.
So the first one is Two Guys, One Trek.
Okay. I forgot about that one. That's a great one.
Ira and Josh are two of the funniest guys. When I first heard their podcast, I became insanely self-conscious about the content we produce because they do it, in my opinion, so much better than we do and so differently. It is a unique perspective and it's funny as hell. They tend to release one season of Star Trek at a time. So they've done the first 3 seasons of the original series. They've done the animated series. They did a special like undercover Mike version of Star Trek Las Vegas where Josh wore a mic and didn't tell anybody the whole time he was walking around Star Trek Las Vegas, which was cool. I can only imagine half the shit I said. But two fantastic guys that Dan and I just love, and they have a great show. It's absolutely worth checking out. And then the other one is Positively Trek, which, much like the name, is very positive. Dan and Bruce, who used to be over on that other big Star Trek podcast network, broke off and started doing their own show, and it's pretty fantastic. You can find it pretty much everywhere. They talk about everything. They used to focus pretty heavily on Star Trek novels back in the day, but now they're branching out. They do novels. They're talking about Discovery. They're talking about various topics in Star Trek and people, and it's just. The theme seems to be positivity and love of Star Trek for a lot of the shows we've talked about tonight. And this one's no exception. So that's Positively Trek and Two Guys, One Trek.
Awesome. I don't know about Positively Trek, so I'm going to check that one out.
Yeah, that's one I have not heard.
Cool. But Two Guys and One Trek is very funny. And I like that they release the whole seasons at one time. So it's unique in that way.
Totally.
Very Netflix of them.
How very.
Very.
Carrie, so very.
Mike,
wow. Do you have a third one or no?
Well, you kind of stole it. My third one was going to be Trek Geeks.
Womp womp.
Mainly because, like I said, back when I was going to the gym, I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and I was going back and forth between Trek Ranks and Trek Geeks. And I kind of started at the beginning of Trek Geeks, and I was trying to catch up to present day.
I'm sorry.
Those early episodes are rough, man.
They are.
But, I can't remember how far I made it. I think I was in like the 50s or 60s before I stopped going and stopped listening. But I'm going to get back to it, and I'm going to try to catch up. I might just start on a more recent one and listen to the more current stuff. But Trek Geeks is my third pick.
Bill, those episodes aren't rough. They're great.
We still refer to our first episode as the hostage tape.
That one is.
Yeah.
But
that was because I don't introduce myself. I introduce Dan, but I never state my name. In fact, the first 3 episodes, I don't introduce myself.
Actually, for the first few, the other guys had to keep reminding me to introduce myself.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's like, who are you? Oh yeah, I'm Andy Fire.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, you may know me from my last name only.
He's the drummer. Don't mind him.
I'm not impressed. No. It's fine. All right. My third and final pick. It's kind of a cop out because it is not Star Trek related, except in host. It's a newer podcast. They're only, I want to say 10 or 11 episodes in right now. But it's a new show called Don't Ask Tig.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Hosted by Tig Notaro, who of course is Jet Reno on Star Trek Discovery, and it is fantastic. Even if you're not a fan of the character Jet Reno, Bill, I am a huge fan of Tig Notaro. I always, again, I'm kind of a big comedy dork. So her hosting a new podcast is always great. She's had guests so far like Will Ferrell, Ira Glass, Cheryl Hines from which I guess she's best friends with, and they have a new podcast together now. Oh, wow. Oscar Nunez from The Office. That was a great episode too. Apparently they're neighbors. And then Aisha Tyler was on the newest episode.
Oh, neat.
But people write in and ask her for advice on things.
It's good.
And she does her best to give actual advice most of the time, but it's of course hilarious. And it's definitely one of my new favorite podcasts out there that's closely semi-related to Trek. But one of the guests a couple weeks ago suggested that she start doing episodes of Don't Ask Tig in character as characters she's played. So she's thinking about doing an entire episode giving people advice from Jet Reno from Star Trek Discovery. Which
I would awesome.
Totally ask advice for.
So Bill, you're not a fan of that character?
That's correct. And I have to qualify this because a lot of people think that I don't like Tig Notaro. I do. I love Tig Notaro. Yeah. Funny as hell. I just don't like the Jet Reno character because it's a little too, here's a phrase you all might be familiar with, bonk bonk on the head with the comedy. Jet Reno just says things that a Starfleet officer wouldn't say.
Jet Reno is just basically Tig Notaro.
That's it. It's Tig in space.
It's Tig Notaro plus like Star Trek technobabble.
Yeah, there's no real stretch there. So in the context of Star Trek Discovery, I don't think it fits. On Lower Decks, I think it would be amazing.
Which I would also love to see.
Right. I'd love to see that too. And Jim's just sitting there stewing like,
what am I going to do? Argue with you? I'm not going to argue with you. You have your opinion. My opinion is the exact opposite of that.
You have your opinion, Bill, wrong as it may be.
Very McCoy-esque, and I love it.
Jim, this is 5-year mission, the podcast. You are allowed to argue all you want here.
Argue with Bill. I mean, we don't have Dan here as a punching bag, so we need a Trek Geeks representative to take that anger out on. So go ahead.
It's not even that it's an argument. I mean, Jim likes it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just not my thing.
I know.
I don't think it's McCoy enough because McCoy, although acerbic, still would never have talked to Jim that way unless he was dressing him down to say.
Well, I mean, for being honest, but McCoy changed his personality changed every other episode based on what they did in the script.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's all just based on I know exactly what they need is what they're getting. I mean, a noble for Sharon. I love that stuff with her and Stamets. I mean, that whole that to me just sold me on how that character works.
Yeah.
With the gum and the duct tape and all those back and forth, and it was all rooted in. She's very binary. She's about the cogs and the wheels, and he's about the kind of the mycelial and how they came together and solved the problem with the May from the mycelial network. That whole scene to me tells me why it works, and I love it. And even in this last episode, Die Trying, that was just aired, that you guys might not have seen by now.
I saw it.
But they have a very short scene with her, the three of them. They show the interaction, how they all kind of play off each other and their different personalities. The security officers watching and going, this is crazy, but it works. And that helps them kind of keep their positions on the ship. It's really well done. I think they've integrated her really well. There are times when Bill's 100% right. It maybe pushes a little too far where it's like, okay, clearly they're playing for laughs and they're playing into the fact they have Tig Notaro, which is great. There are times when that happens, but I think it's well worth it for the mechanics of the Stamets relationship with Reno.
To credit the writers, the last two times that Reno has turned up in an episode, I thought the relationship and the banter with Stamets was toned down a lot more, and it was a lot more believable. So yeah, I have to agree with you there. I thought it was a lot easier to watch because it just wasn't completely constantly over the top.
Yeah, but even like in the very first scene with Reno this season was right after the Discovery crashed, and she makes a joke about her back, and it was a little bit like. Yeah. I mean, it was a little out of place. I don't mind it, and I think it works, and I can see why somebody like Bill's face would did I use that right? Is that my time?
Maybe. Sure.
Anyway, whatever. It's I like
your
it, but
face.
your face.
All your faces. All right. Well, I want to give honorable mentions to all of our podcasters out there, especially the Trek Geeks Network of podcast, Rewind Infinite Trek, when Picard is on, Picard Live, Trek Geeks Game Night, Polytrex, of course, Discovering Trek, now featured on a t-shirt on CBS. CBS.com. The recently launched Deep Space Pride, which I am highly enjoying. And isn't there a new podcast coming soon, Bill?
Science Station 2 will be coming soon with Haley Stoddard. Right? It's a Star Trek and Science podcast, which we're pretty excited about. And then there might be another one coming in early 2021. Maybe.
What? Anything else you can say about that one?
It might be about
stuff.
Things. Actually, Jim's not wrong. It might be about literal stuff.
Oh.
And the things people collect.
Okay. All right.
Exploring that avenue of fandom. That's all I can say about it right now because we're still in pre-production and doing some stuff. But it's I think people are going to like it.
Very interesting. All right. Any other honorable mention podcast shout outs you guys want to give?
I've got two. I've got SETI Alpha 3 at the Nerd Party. I like those guys.
Okay.
Yep. Great guys.
They do a good job. And Primitive Culture is a great podcast. And that's all I'm going to say about it. It's really good. They dive deep. It's very analytical. They dive into like big topics on Trek. It's really good. Primitive Culture.
Okay. All right. Bill, any other honorable mentions, little shout outs for other podcasts?
Yeah, I want to make sure I get the name right because I screw it up every time I say it. So don't mind me.
Never do.
But yeah, the Promenade Merchants podcast.
Yes, that's a good one.
Which is a great one. David Majors and Heather Kirby, they do a great job over there. And it's a great podcast to listen to. So that's my honorable mention for the show.
Okay. Prominent Merchants is very good as well. I should have thought of them as an honorable mention.
Well, there's just so many podcasts, you know.
I know, and they're in my queue now. I've been listening to them pretty regular.
Yeah.
Hey, do you miss getting new content from 5 Year Mission? You should head over to patreon.com/5yearmission and check out our Patreon page. As a patron of the band, you will receive access to rare and behind-the-scenes pictures and videos and other cool stuff. You will also have early access to many things, like video releases or new songs. You can sign up for different levels, from Ensign all the way up to Admiral. One of the perks of being an Admiral on 5 Year Mission's Patreon is that you get to be a producer on this podcast. Currently, our producers are Neil Carpenter, Helen Lake, Debbie Rinke, Carol Jones, Becky and Roxy, Steve and Frankie Palopoli, Madison Rachel Jones, and Jim Moorhouse. Your name could be on this list if you sign up as an Admiral. So head over to patreon.com/5yearmission now.
Fansets. What more can I say about Fansets that hasn't been said already? Well, how about some new releases? How about Picard with his family crest from Picard? How about Hugh from Picard? Oh, and how about this one, the brand new release coming later this month, the USS Cerritos from Star Trek Lower Decks. Get on over to fansets.com right now. due to the pandemic, shipping is a little bit slow. Releases are a little bit slow, but be patient. Everything should be shipping out by the end of the month. And with the holidays coming up especially, head over to Fansets over on Twitter. Oh, and you can see the new holiday pin. That's right. It's going to be Badgie wearing a little Santa hat for 2020. What better could come out of 2020? Lots of things. But this one's going to have to do. So for all your holiday shopping needs, and if you want to save some money, head over to fansets.com right now. Fill up your cart. You can get 15% off of your entire order right now if you head over to Fansets and enter the code 5-year mission. That's the number 5 and then all caps year mission. That's 5-year mission upon checkout and get that 15% off. Fansets. Our pins have character, and we thank Fansets for being the biggest sponsor we have over here on the Trek Geeks Network.
Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap things up with that one. Love to thank Mr. Jim Moorhouse, Bill Smith, my co-host Mike Rittenhouse, of course. I am Andy Fark. Jim, where can people find you online?
You can find me at Trek Ranks on Twitter, at Enterprise Extra on Twitter, trekranks.com. And, you know, I just love to talk about Star Trek. So,
we know.
So check out Trek Ranks, the podcast, the podcast of ranking Treks.
Wow. So very literal. So goddamn literal. Well, Mitch Hedberg shout out there. Bill, where can people find you online?
Before I get to that, I just want to say I miss all you ugly bastards.
I know, and we're of course we're not going to see each other in Vegas.
Yeah. So, well, who knows? Who knows what the future is going to hold? Who knows if there will be an official convention or not in 2021? But this has been great. It's good to see your guys' faces. I miss you all. And I just wanted to say that before we got off of here. So to find me, you can find me on the Twitters at Trek Geek Bill. And of course on Facebook, there's the official Facebook group of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, Camp Kittimer. Lots of positivity there. We don't allow any. I know that guy with the glasses is a real jerk.
I know.
There's no gatekeeping allowed. It's positivity and what we love about Star Trek. So if you're tired of Facebook groups and you want to find one that's Star Trek based that isn't going to drive you to bang your head against the wall, Camp Kittimer may be for you.
It's definitely for everyone. All inclusive. Well,
now that you're there, yeah.
Not unlike a vacation to wonderful Sandals, Jamaica. I knew you'd appreciate that, Bill.
When you get that Boldly Go 5-year mission show rescheduled, let us know, Mike.
That's right.
Totally.
That's going to be awesome. And get year 5 done. Come on, guys, get to work.
We can't even practice together.
Great job.
Supposedly the other 4 are working on their songs, and but we can't really get together and work them all out as a band right now.
You guys take the time you need.
Oh, we will. We are.
Fine. Okay.
All right. We'll see you guys in about a fortnight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go play right now.
Do a little dance. Say bye, Mike.
Bye.
Perfect.
Bye, Mike.
Bye, Mike.
See, these buttholes get it. You don't.
But if I had said bye, Mike, you would have made fun of me for saying bye, Mike.
No, I wouldn't have.
Absolutely would have. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least if you're honest, you can still just be ugly.
I'll put it out there.
Gross.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 5-Year Mission, the podcast. If any of you are interested in listening to more of our music, you can check us out on YouTube or Spotify or iTunes or pretty much anywhere that you can listen to music. Just search for 5-Year Mission and we should be the first thing that comes up. If you would like to contact us in regards to the podcast or anything else that you want to talk to us about, you can email us at 5yearmissionband@gmail.com.
And for more information about the band, you can go to 5yearmission.net. And also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
5 Year Mission, the podcast, is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks podcast network at trekgeeks.com or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.